Okay, great. We are officially there. So Matt, this is our third week of GSC live chats, which is fun. We've had Imran come in and talk to us. We've had Lucy come in to talk to us. And now we have you.
Hello.
Hello. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Matt?
Yeah, okay. So my name's Matt Pinches, or Matthew Pinches, as my mum calls me when I'm in trouble. I am from Worcester, which is sort of in the West Midlands near sort of Hereford, Gloucester, that sort of way. In fact, I've got my Worcester, I didn't realise that I've got my Worcester Warriors rugby top on today. I started acting, I started working in theatre. I went to Bretton Hall, University College Bretton Hall up in Yorkshire, which sadly no longer exists. And I graduated in '98, and then I started working in lots of TIE, lots of community theatre, lots of out of the back of a van into a village hall type touring, rural touring. Then I had a few nice sort of big tours. I played George in George's Marvellous Medicine for Roald Dahl, which was probably one of my favourite times. I've done lots of pantos. And then I ended up forming Guildford Shakespeare Company with Sarah Gobran. And here I am.
Exciting. Wow. So you've done all of that in 2 minutes, Matt. So I feel like we could just chill out the rest of the live chat. Great. So I'm just going to quickly make sure that people are here. If you are watching, just give us a little wave or a little comment or something, so we know that you are out there in the ether supporting us today, and just getting up. So some people, Matt, will be watching this on catch up, and some people will be watching it live, which is very exciting. So for those of you that don't know, these fall as part of our Everyday Miracles project. So on a Monday, Ant, our associate playwright, releases a theatre making video. And then on a Wednesday, our drama therapist, Louise, does a wellbeing video. And then on a Friday, every week, I'm joined by a different guest. So it's 4 o'clock every Friday. If you have any comments for Matt, drop it in the comment section on YouTube, or email me at the EO address, which is on the Everyday Miracles side, and we'll try our best to answer any questions you have, unless they're really complicated, like what's the meaning of life, scones, or is it scone or scone, or questions like those. I don't know if Matt and I are capable of answering at the moment. So we've got a very interesting question just straight away, Matt, so maybe we'll answer it and then have a bit of a talk. So we've got a question here saying, did you have a theatre idol growing up?
Did I have a theatre idol growing up? Probably. I didn't grow up knowing a lot about theatre. I wasn't taken to the theatre very much. I saw a couple of pantomimes and things. In fact, my very first experience in the theatre was to see the Sooty show, which and I hated it. I screamed the house down, the theatre down, and I had to be removed. I was probably only about. I was probably about 17. No, I was probably about, I was probably about, 6 or something like that. And I didn't like the dark and all the other noise around me. I just remember that. So in terms of theatre, no, I suppose growing up in the 80s, I was born in 76. So growing up in the 80s, I had a lot of things like Back to the Future, Marty McFly and Indiana Jones, and those are the sorts of kind of things I would love to have been, or be doing that sort of stuff. And then as I got older and learned about theatre stuff, once I got to sort of sixth form college age, sort of 18, 19, I suppose people like Stephen Burkhoff, and Kenneth Branagh were the two people that were probably the most influential to me at that time, and Kenneth Branagh has continued to be influential to me as well. I've been very lucky. And we met Kenneth Branagh. Kenneth Branagh came to see Othello that we did in 2014, and that was actually, well, a really special moment in so many ways. But he wrote a book, an autobiography called Beginnings, in 1989, I think it was, and it was about his life up to that point, and it was at the point where he was making the film of Henry V, and you can't buy the book anymore; it's out of print. And I read it. I remember reading it. I think I was at university or college, and I've got about 3 copies of it, because every time I see it in a charity shop or something, I buy it. And give it to somebody as a gift, because it continued to inspire me as I was sort of starting out in acting. And I then went to see him in a play, Edmund, at the National Theatre. And I wrote to him afterwards to say I just really enjoyed it and really enjoyed the show and the whole company and everybody. And he wrote back to me, and that was really special. And then when we started the company, Shakespeare Company, we wrote to him again, and he was really supportive, in those first few years, and then to come in 2014 and see a show. It was a lovely story, from that point of view. So probably the most, Kenneth Branagh, I'd probably say, that had the most famous impact on me from that point of view. So.
Wow, that must have been such a pinch me moment seeing him.
It was quite, well, afterwards when we chatted very briefly, and I played Cassio in Othello, and he said, "Oh, well done. Cassio's not easy, is it?" Because he said, "I remember that was my first Shakespeare part that he played in youth theatre in Reading." He was telling me, and I was like, "Oh, yeah." There was nothing worse than kind of acting drunk in front of, acting drunk at the worst time. The worst is the worst thing on stage anyway, because you're trying to act sober whilst being drunk. And then doing it in front of your idol down about 2 meters from you is really scary. But it was a really lovely, pinch me moment. It was nice. It was good.
Nice. And you kind of mentioned that that was kind of at the start of Guildford Shakespeare's Company's journey, the foundation of it. What made you and Sarah come up with the idea for Guildford Shakespeare Company?
Well, I suppose both of us had always loved Shakespeare, and which was a good start. And for me, actually, as a kid, I didn't do very much. I did Taming of the Shrew at school, and then I did. I think that was for GCSE actually, and then I did other stuff at A-level and things. But before then, it was the play titles that fascinated me. There was a sort of sense of mystery and adventure about, like All's Well That Ends Well, or The Tempest, or Measure for Measure. What does that mean? And it just sounds as you like it. Okay, maybe I will. I just found those all quite fascinating. Then you look at the list of characters, such amazing names and their relationships. That's kind of what first, at a young age, got me interested in Shakespeare. But then Sarah and I, it was Sarah's idea. Sarah came to me and said she'd been auditioning for a lot of open air theatres in 2014, 2015, and said, why hasn't Guildford got an open air theatre company? It's perfect sort of venues and audiences here. Why don't we do so? Let's put it on. So I said, yep, okay. I said, I'll give you a hand for the first year, and then, I might not, we'll see. But of course, here I am 14 years later. I'm so glad that she asked me to be part of it, because it's changed my life for unbelievably for the better. But we wanted to make we wanted to. So many people go, oh my God, Shakespeare. Oh God, no, Shakespeare, no. And they don't want to get involved with it, or they think it's too much for them, or they didn't enjoy it at school, or you've got to be of a certain intelligence, or you've got to have a certain amount of money to go to see Shakespeare and things like that. Certainly 14 years ago, and before that, it certainly seemed like that. So we wanted to try and demystify that. We wanted to change people's perceptions of not only of Shakespeare, but also of theatre going, and that it doesn't have to be, the sort of go up to London and sit, pay £60, £70 to see a show with a good view.
£10 for an ice cream and
absolutely the whole thing of theatre going. We wanted to try and reinvigorate, to imbue with a sense of freshness, but also of ownership for the audience, for them to feel like it's their show. And so by adding the extra little caveat of being sight responsive to our approach, so by not necessarily, so rather than working in a theatre, producing plays in a theatre, being sight responsive means that you use venues or sites and you respond to them in the way that the site or the venue responds to you. So, for example, that we've worked in churches, in barns, in tents, on lakes, castles, and they change the way the show feels. We've done it in woods, in groves, and you use that venue, use the whole thing. So let's say with the open air, for example, you can use the trees. You can have actors sat in the trees, rope ladders, rope bridges. You can bring actual motor cars on stage, and you can, rope swing. You can get covered in paint. You can arrive by boat, leave the stage by boat. You can come from behind the audience, under the audience, above the audience. All of a sudden, the whole world of the play is suddenly all around you. So for audiences, they really are in the forest outside Athens in A Midsummer Night's Dream, and they actually do go there with the mechanicals and with Puck, and we take them there. And so you get that real sense of being immersed in the world around you. And that, for many people, that opens up theatre. It's not a normal theatre experience, so you're having something brand new. Secondly, it suddenly makes the reality of these characters' situations much more touchable, tangible. And then it also allows people to meet theatre and Shakespeare on their own terms. They're not sort of sat in, row B, seat number 6. This is my seat, and now I've got to watch Hamlet and understand it. They can actually let it come to them, which was kind of what we hoped to achieve in the very beginning.
Yeah, and it's interesting, in the theatre making videos this week, Ant speaks to them about the journey of the character, whether it's a emotional journey or whether it's a physical journey. And I remember the first play I saw of Guildford Shakespeare, Midsummer Night's Dream, we were taking on a physical journey throughout, was it Racks Close? Where was it, that one?
Yeah, the former chalk quarry. Yeah, up there. And I think that, you started, the idea was it was sort of, you started down near buildings, and so there's a big sort of 1960s staircase there, and you've come up from the road, and you can hear the town and the buzz, and then as you go deeper into the quarry, which is now all wooded and grassed, it feels like you're leaving the city behind, and you're going into a mystical wood. And then at the end of the play, of course, they all go back to Athens. And so the final at the end of the play was done back in the place where we all started. So you've been taken in somewhere and brought back out again. And I think, and for actors, that's really, it adds something that you don't get a chance to do. So for example, like if, you read about actors or acting companies who will, they're doing Midsummer Night's Dream, for example, and they'll go and they'll find somewhere which is like a forest or a wood, and they'll just rehearse some scenes so they get the feel of what it's like to be in a wood. But for us, we get to be in the wood every night, and so do the audience. And not only that, the audience are with us. So whether there's birds twittering or there's bits of the rain, the wind, or whatever, the natural elements are all around you, and they inform how you perform as well. And I think whether that's in a church, for example, again, we've done a lot of shows in churches where that architecture and that space really informs not only the play, but also your own performance. You suddenly become aware of how small you are in relation to the size of the building. So then if you're Hamlet all of a sudden talking about you know, what it is to be alive and what a piece of work is man. And you're in front of these massive sort of monuments and things that aren't bits of wood that have been made in a workshop and brought into the theatre. They're actually been there for, you know, 400 or 500 years or more. Suddenly that all becomes so much more real in that world, and it really informs, I hope it really informs the audience as well, and they get a deeper sense of enjoyment.
Yeah, definitely. We've been enjoying ourselves chatting so much, Matt, that I haven't even looked at the comments. And we have, well, luckily I've answered one of these anyway. What drew you to forming the Shakespeare Company? So that's good. What is the most memorable venue you've performed at? Big question.
Goodness. Goodness, there are favourites that I have. So the Law College on Portsmouth Road, or the University of Law, is a beautiful venue. Holy Trinity Church is always a favourite, as is the little tiny church, the oldest building in Guildford, St Mary's Church, on Quarry Street, which is really, really beautiful. I'm racking my brains to think about, have we done something? I mean, the opportunity to do things like, you know, perform on the balcony of the Guild Hall on the High Street is really, you know, for that, you know, Guildford Shakespeare Company has enabled me to do that, for example, or on Christmas lights switch on night, standing on the balcony and doing a bit of Shakespeare in front of everybody. Quite other.
That's kind of celebrities, you know. That's like One Direction, Spice Girls turning on the Christmas lights.
Well, indeed. We've had, you know, the Spiegel tent. That was, you know, the antique mirror tent that we brought over from Belgium. That was really a special. I've never performed in there, but it's a beautiful space to bring audiences to. You know, we're going to finish this conversation. I'll suddenly go, oh no, I remember that one. But yeah, no.
Well, then you can comment on the video below, Matt, and you can add your own.
Okay.
Your own thing. Yeah, so feel free to type any questions you have in the box and we'll answer them. We have one here. If you could go back in time, what would you say to yourself when you're just starting the company? So you mentioned you like Back to the Future. So this is our version of Back to the Future. Go back to 2004 or 2005, wherever, and then what would you say to yourself?
Wow.
Don't do it, because that's not what we want to hear.
No, definitely. I'd say, first of all, you're doing the right thing. I would say, oh God, wow. There's so many things I'd say to myself, I suppose. I'd say, don't sweat. It will, whatever you think is kind of whatever you think in that moment is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done, well, there'll come something that will top that, and again, you'll come to another what seems to be insurmountable challenge, and you'll get past that. And whenever you think, you know, there's a line from in King Lear. He says, "This is not the worst, so long as we can say this is the worst." Meaning that if you can say this is the hardest thing you've ever done, and if you're able to say it and label it as that, then actually it's probably not. And that's there's a good little lesson in there somewhere that, you know, it will, at the time it will feel impossible, but everything is, you know, it is, you know, the things are only impossible until they're achieved, and you can achieve almost anything if you can put your mind. If you put your mind to it. So I'd probably tell myself something a little bit like that. I'd probably tell myself to buy lots of waterproofs in the opening years of the open air seasons. I would, what else would I tell myself? I would probably say you're going to have the most amount of joy doing your job. So don't be afraid of what's to come. You will meet some truly incredibly talented and inspiring people along the way. So always, you never know what's around the corner, but there's always going to be something exciting around the corner.
And it's almost like if we think back to our Ugly Duckling videos that we've been looking at the last couple of weeks, That's a very similar thing that you would say to the Ugly Duckling, isn't it? When he's going from the nest to the lake to the wide world, like whether he wants to give up or whatever. But it's, you know, keep going. You'll find your people. There's so much joy ahead, isn't there?
Yeah, and you never know what the, you know, Sarah and I started Gill Shooting with no knowledge of what might happen. It was always, you know, that first show was 6 months away from when we set the company up. And then we decided to do it again. So we gave ourselves 12 months and that was it. Just 12 months ahead to that. And you just didn't know what was going to be around the corner on that journey during that time. And one thing I'm proud of us of doing is that we didn't try to run before we could walk. And we took stuff not slowly, but we took things carefully, and while still taking risks, you know, artistic risks and things, and putting our money where our mouth was, if you like, and saying we're going to do something, but being careful and trying to shape the journey as you go. And I think there's an element of truth in that for the Ugly Duckling as well. Of you know, he or she runs into things, but actually is forever trying to work out the safest way to do it or how to get out of it and stuff like that. So I think, yeah,
nice. And in the videos this week, Louise has been looking at kind of breathing techniques and what to do when, you know, these situations do feel overwhelming. And Jane asked a really good question last week to Lucy, saying, what do you do when you get stage fright before you go on stage? I just wonder if there's anything personally you find helpful for those feelings of overwhelmness and anxiety.
Yeah, you know, I do suffer with anxiety and with worry a lot. And it's funny, a lot of people say, to, you know, being on stage and stuff like that, they go, oh, you're incredibly confident and you're, you know, la 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 la. And actually, that's very different when you've got a costume on and you're being a character and stuff. You're someone else, you're not you. And so that's easy to do from that point of view. Being yourself is harder, and recognizing those things, and it doesn't stop you from, you know, feeling all of those inadequacies or worries about how people might perceive you or what you've said and or what you're going to say and so on. I mean, sorry, that's one point. But about the stage fright, yeah, you know, it doesn't matter how many times you've played a character or been on stage or you're about to go and speak at a function or something. Breathing is the most. Breathing is so obvious and it's so easy, but it's the one thing we don't do very well at all. And it feels rather indulgent to go and stand outside and breathe for 3 minutes and to concentrate on your breath. But why shouldn't you? And it's always good advice to give others. It's when you should listen to it to yourself. And I'm not always the best at listening to my own advice. But I find being outside relaxing. I very rarely have headphones on and have music or podcasts or anything like that. I don't like extra. I like music in the car or music in the house or something, but walking or whatever, I'd much prefer to hear the noise of the world around me, whether it's nature or even if it's traffic or something. I just like that reality around me. I think being in nature and just focusing on something, actually, stopping and looking at, in this period of lockdown, actually, I've become really into bird watching and stuff. And actually, you have to be really patient with bird watching. You have to wait for them to come and wait for them to come back and stuff. And the same with growing something in the garden. It's like things don't grow instantly. You have to kind of sit and watch. And by sitting and watching and looking at something specific, that's just the formation of a leaf or a petal. It's not necessarily that you're looking at just the leaf or the petal. You're actually, what you're doing is you're allowing your mind to focus on one thing and completely get rid of all of the mess that takes over your brain. And it's really, really refreshing. And so if I'm going on stage and stuff, I do have I usually take myself away from the dressing room for 5 minutes, find a quiet spot, and that's lovely in the open air, or in the churches, for example, you know, sit there and lie behind, you know, some pews or something, and you can just disappear and into the sound of the building or the trees or whatever. But then but breathing and it's so important. God, yeah. And I love
life-giving, isn't it? You just forget when you're
stressed.
stressed.
We get to do it. And Louise's exercise of focusing on the candle and on the flame is so simple, but yeah, it's so good.
Lovely. Okay, cool. How have you found the online productions during lockdown is a question we have here.
Terrifying. We're making a little trailer at the moment of The Wind in the Willows, of all of the backstage stuff. So the stuff that, you know, the audience don't see. So this, which will be really lovely to share with people, because you're just, you know, I'm just in my back room at home, as is everybody else. You've got a green screen there, you've got a computer in front of you, and that's it. And props and bits of costume walking around you. And, you know, you're running around like a toad dressed as a washerwoman. And I'm sure my neighbours must have thought I was absolutely like off my head. Well, what on earth is this poor guy doing upstairs? And it is a real surreal moment. And it's just like being on stage, because sometimes you have these out of body experiences where you're there and you're acting, you're doing something, or you're listening to someone else doing their bit. And then all of a sudden there's this little person on your shoulder goes, you're on stage, there's 200 people out there and it's starting to rain and you're only wearing a skirt. And, you know, all of a sudden you like, oh, this is a really bonkers moment, but okay, get on with it, move on, and you carry on. But the online stuff has been really interesting. It's been really interesting to do. And it's a combination of doing TV acting and theatre acting, but doing it all on your own and having no one to respond to and feed off. That's the other thing. You realize how much you feed off the energy, the physical energy of someone's presence, even if they're not speaking, when you're in a rehearsal room. But also it's been a great exercise, for me anyway, of listening. So of listening to that, listening to your cue, but listening to what the other actor is saying or the character is saying, so that you're feeding off that, because you don't have the physical visual stuff that's happening in the scene at the same time. So if the character is cross with you, you can't see that the actor is next to you crossing their arms or whatever. You're just focusing on your camera. It's a very odd, it's odd, but it's been great fun.
Yeah, and we've kind of learned a lot as we've gone along, haven't we? Like, you know, you're talking about your green screen, but the first murder mystery we had, didn't you like nail in a green carpet or something to
yeah, I couldn't find anything green, so I had to go upstairs. I went into the loft looking for, I thought I have a green blanket or something, I don't know. And then I was like sat there going, I haven't got nothing. Oh, hang on, there's a green carpet on the floor of the loft. Okay, so I thought, how do I put this up? So I just nailed it to the wall of the back bedroom. Thankfully, it's not been decorated ever since we moved in. So it is due to be redecorated. So yeah, and you learn, you know, you're just using the basics that you've got to hand, and slowly over time you go, well, actually, do you know what? I'll invest in a bit of a better speaker, or you know, use that or whatever. So yeah.
Okay, so final question. We had one sent in, and it kind of links in with Ant's videos this week. Sybil said, what techniques do you use to get to know your character? So this week in the video, Ant's asked them to write a diary entry as one of the characters. So thinking about what they feel, the hobbies. Is that something you've ever done, or what other techniques do you use when preparing for the role?
Well, you know, sometimes there's like a core of things that I probably use every time, and then it's depending on the character in the play that I'll draw on other things. So one of the exercises, a sort of Shakespeare exercise, and you could work with any play that you're in, is 4 things. So you write down 4 things. You write down a list of what you say about other people, what other people say about you, what you say about yourself, and then the pure facts that you can glean from the script. So for example, someone might say how old you are, or the facts might be there's reference to the fact that you are wearing a certain piece of clothing, or you live in a house as opposed to a tent or something. So only the facts that you definitely have. So that's a great way to create a sort of really good mosaic of what people in the plays world think of you, what you think of them, and what you think about yourself. I also look at the words I use. So what types of what kind of words did my character use which are unusual or seem to be particular to that character? So for example, do they say things like maybe if it was modern, they might be saying, "Oh, do you know what I mean?" a lot, or they might say thank you, or they might say thanks a lot. So what are the sort of traits in the vocabulary? But then there might be other things that I've done in the past, like create playlists for my character. What would they listen? What kind of music would they listen to? When I play Bottom, going back to the Midsummer Night's Dream, Bottom, the last time we did it in the 60s, he was a member of the local amateur dramatic society in the 60s. So what kind of films was he into? What kind of the theatre would he have been attracted to in the 60s, and that sort of stuff. So yeah, there's loads of really good sort of meaty things that you can get your teeth into with characters, which is fun.
Yeah, it's so interesting, Matt, because just at that second I got an email saying that Sasha and Jane, who normally join us for the live chats and are very active, aren't able to join us because Sasha's poorly. So Sasha, when you watch this, I hope you're better. But also sent through was a soundtrack for her. She's playing Richard III, so she's sent through a soundtrack of all the different songs that he would listen to.
So
it's really funny how they come in at very similar times.
I find a soundtrack really, really helpful to me, whether it's the style of the show or whether it's a character. Putting a little playlist together of maybe, I don't know, 5-10 songs. I think I really like that. I really like that, because then you can listen to it, before the show or in rehearsals or something like that, and it's something you can share with other actors as well. And that's quite a nice thing to be able to share as well. What would your character, a bit like Desert Island Discs? What would your character take away with you, to the desert island?
Nice.
There was a really
no, you go for it, Matt.
Well, no, there was one sort of drama game, really. But if you were what would you be? So, like in a cast, you can go. So, all the cast characters are there from Midsummer Night's Dream. So, what kind of chocolate bar would you be? If your character was a chocolate bar, what would they be? So you start to kind of go, oh, I think Bottom would be, I don't know, maybe a picnic, or I don't know, and quite often it's don't think too hard about it. What's the first thing that? But it's not what Matt's chocolate bar would be. It's what Bottom's chocolate bar would be. But like what flavour of crisps, or what I don't know.
I think you can tell a lot by people sandwich choices, Matt. I think are you a plain cheese, or do you have a bit of pickle or a bit of mum? I think a sandwich is a indicator. My best bit of feedback I ever got on a scene that I was doing was this is at drama school. Fran, I felt like that was more of a chalk ice, and I think your characters are tutti frutti.
Oh, no.
Like, great, Andrew.
Wow, they're more different, aren't they? They really couldn't be more different. That's good. No, but ice cream's good. I hope got
to the tutti frutti at the end, Matt. But he used to say.
Did you think
thank you so much. Say it again, Matt.
Did you agree?
I was 18, so I agreed with whatever he said, but I didn't fully understand it. And then years later, I was like, no, I really get what he means. That's and I genuinely think it's a really fun feedback, fun comment. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, thank you so much, Matt, for coming in and talking to us today. It's been really, really interesting, and thank you for the people who have watched and commented. I know there's a few people who are watching the video that will be joining me for the Zoom cafe now. And if you want to join us, if you're 12 to 18 and you're under CAMS, drop me an email during the week and I'll talk to you and add you to the list for the following week. You are more than welcome to join us at 4:30 on a Friday. But thank you so much, Matt. What are you going to do now?
I'm going probably back to my laptop and to continue working on on the unknown plans for for what we do next.
So let's all send positive vibes your way, okay? We're sending them to you.
It's Friday, so it's all good.
It's Friday. Great. Thank you so much. I'll see you later. See you next week at 4 o'clock. Bye.
Take care.